You've probably noticed the increased river flows moving through the Middle Valley this month. Part of the reason we see extra water this time of year is that irrigation season has ended and diversions for agricultural purposes in the Middle Valley and in the communities north of us are no longer occurring. The riparian corridor is also using less water right now because of vegetation and the bosque has gone dormant for the winter. In addition to the higher flows due to winter low consumption conditions, Middle Rio Grande flows are currently elevated because the state of New Mexico, the Bureau of Reclamation, and the Corps of Engineers have coordinated to release the release of unused Pryor and Paramount water from Abiquiu Reservoir for delivery to Elephant Butte. This release is occurring because the Pryor and Paramount water was stored during a period when Rio Grande compact restrictions were in place that limited native Rio Grande storage for non-Pryor and Paramount lands in New Mexico. Since this portion of Pryor and Paramount water was not used during the 2025 irrigation season, it is now being released from storage for delivery to Elephant Butte before the end of the calendar year. Pryor and Paramount water is native Rio Grande water stored in upstream reservoirs for the priority lands of the 6 Middle Rio Grande pueblos. Native Rio Grande water is the water that naturally occurs within the Rio Grande Basin and is subject to the rules of the Rio Grande Compact. When compact restrictions are in place that limit native Rio Grande storage, the only native water that may be stored is the Pryor and Paramount water reserved for the Pueblo priority lands. This contrasts with San Juan Chama project water, which is imported from the San Juan Basin and not governed by the compact. This year, there was about 28,000 acre-feet of water that needed to be moved out of Abiquiu before the end of the calendar year. Releases began on November 30th and have been increasing in planned increments so the Corps can evaluate channel conditions in the Rio Chama before each step up. I think I have a hydrograph of that. Thank you. Currently, there's about 1,400 cubic feet per second being released from Abiquiu. This is the highest release rate the Corps has been able to achieve from Abiquiu since the state dredged the Rio Chama sediment plug in 2024. They have not had the opportunity to release at such a high rate because the hydrology has not provided enough water to warrant a release rate that high. At 1,400 CFS, the river appears to be staying confined within the channel, which is a good sign for moving water through this reach if we see a high runoff next spring. The release of the unused Pryor and Paramount water is scheduled to be completed by December 17th. At that point, the reservoir will return to bypassing native inflow. Today, the ODE gauge is reporting about 2,000 CFS. I think I have a hydrograph of that too. Thanks. Looking ahead to next year, the current SNOTEL map shows that snowpack in the basin is below average for this point in the season. It is still too early in the winter to know what runoff might look like in 2026. But the National Weather Service seasonal outlook shows the basin is likely to experience above average temperatures and below average precipitation through February. Or I think this is through March. So regardless of how the snowpack develops, I do not see a scenario where MRGCD will be able to store any native Rio Grande water next year. This is due to the size of New Mexico's existing compact debt and the fact that storage in Elephant Butte and Caballo remains well below the 400,000 acre foot threshold. New Mexico's compact debt at the end of 2024 was 124,000 acre feet, and a very preliminary estimate for the 2025 compact accounting has New Mexico likely growing its Rio Grande compact debt by 10,000 acre feet for 2025. Without the ability to store native water in upstream reservoirs, the only storage water MRGCD will have available next year is its 2026 San Juan Chama allocation. Even if MRGCD receives a full San Juan Chama allocation, it will not be enough to supplement river flows through the entire summer after spring runoff if monsoon rains do not materialize. Farmers need to be prepared for the possibility of limited irrigation deliveries next year. With that, I will encourage everyone to pray for snow.